why did you create mindful parenting? You know, how did this all happen?
Well, it came out of my own struggles first, like my own like abject failure, the way I saw it as a parent. But so I'm going to just take us back to there because like what I was really frustrated with and I was really struggling because I have a bad temper that I got legitimately inherited from my family. And I was, my daughter, she was challenging, highly sensitive kid. I'm a highly sensitive person. So when she started kind of talking back to me and all those things that kids do when they're 18 months and 2 years old, this temper came out and I was so ashamed of it. And so, I was just, it was just exactly what I didn't want because that's my father had that temper. And this was exactly what I didn't want to do. So I was so frustrated and I started really diving into learning and things like that. And I discovered so many great parenting coaches who had really great advice and great things to say about how to respond to your kids. And, you know, I was just so frustrated because I couldn't remember any of it when I was in that like stressed losing it place. Like I couldn't remember because the advice was always like, pause, then just say this. And I was like, but I can't just like, what about before the pause part? Like, I was so frustrated. So, for me, that part really frustrated me. So, I really was like diving back into my mindfulness work and mindfulness training that I'd been like studying it since I was a teenager. A few years before I had started my own meditation practice. Of course, after one had a baby, it kind of fell out of the wayside. But I knew that that was like the key for me to help me ground and slow down and calm my waves. And I started to learn more and more and more about all the recent research that had come out about mindfulness, about how the changes in the brain and how it really helps to calm our reactivity and slow down that nervous system stress response. And I was realizing, oh, the reason I can't just respond the way these coaches are telling me to respond is because my nervous system is like hijacking my brain and I literally can't access those parts of the brain. And so as I started to put these together, I realized that like one without the other wasn't enough. And I had been blogging and I had released a program about creating your own daily practice. And I'd been doing this sort of steady work, sharing what was going on. And I had I don't know when I started coaching along that timeline, it's somewhere along there, but I realized that, that there were all these like great ways to respond and they were all missing this work with the mindfulness. And then also equally like in the mindfulness world, kind of people, so there are some people who teach like what they call mindful parenting, but I kind of think of it as like mindfulness for parents, where they would just kind of assume like, well, if you can calm down your stress response and you can be calmer, then you're just going to naturally say something better. You're going to just naturally respond more skillfully to your kids. And I proved that was not true because I was able to calm down. And then I said some really, stupid things that were maybe just like habits from my family or culture. And then my little daughter was like, kaboom, all over again. So I wanted, I, mindful parenting came together after a while. I had been starting doing some coaching and I actually sat down with a book that said, ask the question that was like, I actually remember where I was like sitting under a tree. I think my daughter had a lesson. I was like sitting under a tree outside and I was like reading this book and it said like if money were no object and you were, whatever, you were guaranteed of success, like what would you make? And I was like, oh, I would make mindful parenting where it brings together all this mindfulness work and the self-compassion work with the skillful communication work because it doesn't make sense that they're separate. So that's how it was for me. It was something that I started to implement like in my own life, the kind of the two sides, and started to share with my clients. And then I really just put it together in mindful parenting.
So were you already doing these things as you were kind of learning them and you were seeing a difference? Can you tell us about that?
Sure. Yeah. Yeah, definitely. I um I was starting to I knew I had to dive back into my mindfulness practice as I was in that really frustrated state and take care of myself so that I just had some resources to be able to respond better to this incredibly sensitive kiddo. And so I started to just make sure I did like a little yoga and a little meditation every single morning and not just get up when she woke me up, but set my alarm and get up a little earlier. And that was making a really big difference for how I was able to respond to her. And at the same time, I started really studying like nonviolent communication. I was listening obsessively to Zen Parenting Radio. Shout out to Todd and Kathy, they're amazing. And as I was looking at these things, I was like, well, how do you respond this way? How do you speak? How do you speak in a more skillful way? And I even did a training in parent effectiveness training, which is a lot of like communication skills. So I was building my own, I was working those two sides at once. It was really like many years of kind of practice and study, kind of putting these together. And I was slowly seeing my own, like, I was slowly starting. First for me was calming down and the stress response, and then the communication. It is, as you know, Lynn, because you're like a member of mindful parenting, like it's kind of like learning a new language, right? Like learning these new communication skills. So that kind of came after, as I started to like get more control over, my own sense of groundedness and etc. Then I was able to like start to learn this other language and translate these things I wanted to say into more skillful language. So that was kind of the process for me. Catch new episodes of the Mindful Mama podcast and other free resources, including the Mindful Mom Guide at mindfulmamamentor.com. You can listen to every back catalog episode, including interviews with Dr. Dan Siegel, Janla Van Zandt, Sharon Salzberg, and get meditations, join our private Facebook group, and more. Go to mindfulmamamentor.com now. I'll see you there.